Alzheimer's disease is the most common cause of dementia, affecting as many as 3 million people a year and as many as a third of all people over 85 years old, according to the National Institutes of Health. All dementia is not Alzheimer's disease. Dementia is caused by damage to the brain, which may result from a specific brain disease, such as Alzheimer's or Lewy body dementia, or which may occur from injury or from vascular problems, such as a stroke. Many patients who have dementia have more than one disease process causing those symptoms. Dementia results when one healthy neurons in the brain stop working, lose connection, and die. Dementia is not just memory loss, although memory loss may be an early sign. Memory loss that is beyond the usual course of aging may include forgetting how to do things that you've done many times before, having trouble learning new things, repeating new phrases and new stories in the same conversation, having trouble making choices or handling money, and not being able to track what happens each day. Memory problems become serious when they affect your daily life. If you can't remember how to get home or how to make your cell phone work, that's serious. Dementia also causes problems with language and visual perception, with problem solving, self-management, and the ability to focus and pay attention. Dementia often causes personality changes and an inability to control emotions. In the later stages, a person with dementia may need assistance with even the most basic functions of daily living. Many people are now caring for elders who have health problems. Among these caregiving family members, those caring for an elder with dementia face the most dreadful and inevitable path. It is a burden to care for a spouse or a loved one who has heart disease or cancer and who may need assistance with medications, mobility, and taking meals. It is a terrible burden to care for a spouse or parent who no longer knows you, who is afraid of you, who accuses you of stealing or of even trying to kill him, or who may be having hallucinations. Dementia is not curable. It is treatable depending on what disease process or processes are operating to create the dementia. Once brain cells have been damaged, they cannot be replaced, according to the American Academy of Family Physicians. When the causes of dementia can't be reversed, there may be medicines which will slow the progression of the disease, and there may be lifestyle changes that can help. For example, when vascular deficiencies cause the dementia, exercise that increases blood flow to the brain may help slow the damage. Although there is no cure for the causes of dementia, there is good reason to see a doctor if you or a loved one is showing signs. Certain health problems, such as dehydration, can mimic dementia. Such conditions can be treated, and if the cognitive problems clear up with treatment of an infection or dehydration, then there may be no permanent damage. Side effects from medications may also present as dementia, and your doctor may need to change your prescription. The most common cause of dementia, Alzheimer's disease, cannot be definitely diagnosed until after death in an autopsy, according to the National Institutes of Health. However, your doctor can perform cognitive function tests and may refer you to a neuropsychologist. The Mayo Clinic's Health Information Online says that lab tests may help rule out thyroid disorder or vitamin B12 deficiency, which can cause dementia-like symptoms. Brain scans may be helpful by ruling out other causes of dementia, such as a brain tumor or hemorrhage. Finally, a brain scan may be able to differentiate between different types of degenerative brain disease and may be useful for setting a baseline regarding the extent of the damage to your brain. What you must not do if you suspect that you or a loved one may be developing some form of dementia is ignore it and hope it will go away. As noted above, there may be treatable diseases which mimic dementia. Some of these processes, such as cardiovascular problems, may be causing damage to your brain, but may be treatable by medicine or lifestyle changes. You may be allowing damage to continue by trying to pretend there's nothing wrong. And if you do have Alzheimer's disease or Lewy body dementia, there may be medicines which can slow the progression of the disease. If you have one of these forms of dementia, the one thing that is certain is that the disease will progress. The dementia will get worse. Even under treatment, the speed of the progression of the disease may vary widely among patients. In addition to the doctor's help, a person who has begun to suspect dementia needs the assistance of a lawyer. You must put your affairs in order, even though it may be many years before you die. The modern process of estate planning includes planning for incapacity. You must make certain that you have provided for someone to assist you with your financial matters in the early stages of disease, and that person is going to have to take over your financial affairs completely in the end stages. You will also need a trusted fiduciary to make healthcare decisions for the time when you no longer can evaluate what the doctor is telling you and make appropriate decisions. Finally, you must prepare your family and those who will be providing care. You do not need to apologize. You have a disease. However, the more you can do to proactively prepare for your diminishing capacity, the less burden you'll be on your loved ones. Do not extract promises never to put you in a home. Rather, visit care facilities and pick one you like, or at least tell your children what's important to you in that kind of setting. Do not assume that you will have sufficient money to pay for your care. Rather, help your chosen financial fiduciary to budget for care and plan to provide for increasing amounts of care as the disease progresses. Early on, you should contact a geriatric care consultant. These are people who understand what care will be needed, what changes are needed in your home so you can stay there, and what facilities are available in your area to have appropriate levels of care. We all hope that one day there will be a cure for dementia. Until there is, it remains an awful possibility that some of us must face and all of us must recognize. Thank you.
Please take a few minutes and write down your comments for Brian. And may I have a timer's report for Brian's speech?
Brian spoke for 7 minutes and 15 seconds.
7 minutes, 15 seconds. Welcome, Svetlana.
Hello. Hello. If I can be helpful in any way, I'm here. A Toastmaster, if you still need a Toastmaster, I'm here.
I'll still continue being Toastmaster, but because we're taking a couple minutes as we're writing down some information, want to share with us some of your words of kindness?
Of course.
Do you have something you'd like to share with us about your kind words?
My own kind words. Well, I must say that some quotes sound as if I pronounced them when I was having breakfast this morning. And now I see it was Sarah Fielding who said them. And who is Sarah Fielding? How did she know I would say that years later? The words of kindness are more healing to a drooping heart than balm and honey. Sarah Fielding. And she was a British author of the 18th century. The words of kindness are more healing to a drooping heart than balm or honey.
Thank you.
So beautiful.
Our next speaker is Dave Kaufman. We know that Dave is an experienced and entertaining speaker. He is also a veteran who served for 2 years in the Vietnam conflict. He was awarded the Purple Heart, the Bronze Star for Valor, and the Army Commendation Medal, and several lesser that we don't, that he doesn't need to talk about. Dave is a long-time member of Toastmasters. When I joined Toastmasters, it was exciting as I was I've only been a Toastmaster for 3 years. And as I joined Toastmasters, I found out that you could go to competitions because of Dave. And so Dave and I took trips to go do some competitions together, and it was a lot of fun to have Dave in the car with me and telling me stories as we were driving down to Florence for our first competition. And he told me of all the perfect fishing holes between here and Florence. Help me welcome Dave as our second speaker, and I will be his evaluator.
Toastmaster, fellow Toastmasters. I didn't hear him say the name of my speech, but it is the 11th day of the 11th month, Veterans Day, last Sunday. I chose that topic because I am an American veteran. How many other veterans do we have? No, at least one. Okay, just one. A veteran is someone who at some point in his life, his or her life, has written a blank check payable to the United States of America for any amount up to and including his very life. Veterans take that very seriously. Veterans Day didn't start out to be Veterans Day. It was initially called Armistice Day. Armistice Day ended World War I. It was on the 11th hour of the 11th day of the 11th month that was signed, and the war was officially over. That was billed as the war that was going to end all wars. As it turned out, a lot of the things at the conclusion of that war caused some of the succeeding wars. The hardships placed on the German people after that war virtually ensured that somebody like Hitler would take over. And sure enough, that happened, and it turned out to be an even worse war than the previous war. But it was changed to Veterans Day because obviously it wasn't the end of all wars. We still have conflicts going on all over the globe that Americans are involved in. One of my favorite nephews is in the National Guard. Just found out that he's soon to be deployed to Africa. And it's not a very pleasant part of Africa to be. It's a very dangerous place. And so he's joining the ranks of the veterans in my family. I want to talk about it in terms of how it affects all veterans. The Revolutionary War, where we were fighting for our very independence, the people that were willing to undergo the hardships at Valley Forge and Bunker Hill, places like that, people that were willing to take the chance to pay that ultimate price to make sure this country succeeded. In succeeding wars, we had the War of 1812, where the British, once again, they weren't satisfied. They're going to try it once again. And Andrew Jackson managed to gather a mass of people at New Orleans that inflicted a defeat on the British troops so bad that they never tried to invade us again until the Beatles. After that, we had World War I. That was the war that was going to end all wars. Obviously, it didn't, but we lost people in places like Castle Fury and other Bellow Wood, places like that. Some of the heroes that came out of that. Sergeant York was one of my heroes coming out. He was a man that hated the very idea of war. And what he did earn the Medal of Honor in that war was to save lives, not to take lives. He was the most decorated person of that war. And I'm not just talking about the decorated veterans. Not everybody wins the Medal of Honor. After that, we had a conflict called the Boxer Rebellion, where Americans were involved there. We had issues with Spain throughout on this side of the Atlantic, and so we had a lot of our troops that went to rain freeze here. We had Teddy Roosevelt running up San Juan Hill. And for the life of me, and this has to do with my dimension, it's due to my stroke. I can't remember things like Cuba. We had people involved in that. And then finally, we had World War II. It's actually not finally, World War II. One of the most terrible conflicts. It was the price we had to pay for not doing it right in World War I. The nature of warfare began to change in World War II. In the early wars, it was mostly the soldiers that died. Starting with World War II, more and more, it was the people, the innocents, that became involved. And so the role of the soldier became even more important if he was going to save those lives, if he was going to free people from tyranny. At the end of World War II, it still hasn't ended. We've had several more conflicts that American soldiers have put their life on the line for their country. Happily put their life on the line for their country. My personal reflections as a veteran, I think one of the things that I share with all veterans today, even the ones that are serving in Afghanistan and in Iraq, we have a great love for this country, so much so that we were willing to write that blank check to our country. And knowing that when you sign up, not everybody had to go overseas, but they still, when they signed up, they knew that was a possibility. When I signed up, I wanted to go to the war. I was a little bit screwy even then. But that's what I wanted to do, because I believe in the mission. As a veteran, things, symbolism, give me of things like the national anthem. I can't tell you how deeply that affects me. And the flag. When I go to a ball game and they play the national anthem, it never fails to bring tears to my eyes as I remember the price I paid for that and the price my friends have paid. I would remind you at this day, we've just finished Veterans Day. All veterans have paid a price. Everyone gave some, and some gave all. And so when we remember Veterans Day and all the best things this country stands for, remember those people that put their life on the line, some of them to the very end of it, where their life was, they knew when they went into the battle that they weren't going to walk out. Remember those people that have written that blank check to this country for the protection of all of our nation.
Thank you, Dave. Please take a few minutes and write him some notes for his speech. We will now move into our tabletop. Can I get a timer's report?
Dave spoke for 7 minutes and 37 seconds.
Very nice.
Would have been fine without the burrito.
I thought that was a great example. I know you were trying to make sure that everybody understood Brian's speech by giving that example. But kudos for you for improvising that. So thank you. Kathleen is going to lead us for a few minutes in some table topics. I will have her come to the lectern.
Fellow Toastmasters, I was delighted when Svetlana chose as her theme World Kindness Day for the time that she was going to be Toastmaster, because it made it very easy for me to find something that we could use for table topics today. Sometimes we have talked about random acts of kindness that happen in our lives, where somebody is suddenly there or steps in when it's totally unexpected. And so for the first topic speech today, Larry, would you be willing to share with us a time when you received some unexpected kindness? You need to stand up. A random act of kindness.
Oh, put me on the spot.
That's the idea.
Well, I meditate daily, and sometimes in meditation I hear messages that encourage me to do something. And there was a time when my uncle was dying, and he was an uncle that was estranged from the family, and I wasn't close to him, and my mother, who's passed away, actually really resented me. And I received a message that just said, what is love inviting of you? And it occurred to me right after that to go visit my Uncle Walt in the hospital. And so I did that. I had never been to his house. I'd never visited him before, but I walked into the room and he was laying in his bed, and he looked up and said, "What are you doing?" It was very surprising. And so I did what I felt was my duty. And as I was about to leave, his wife came in, and she, because she was married to my uncle, had been estranged from family. And she was absolutely delighted to see me. And her, the way she welcomed me, and we spent an hour talking, and it really helped to pull our whole family together again. And I just felt like that was one of the great gifts of my life.
Thank you, Larry. Appreciate that. That is a sweet story. Larry has spoken about giving a random act of kindness. Patty, when have you received a random act of kindness?
Table topics. I just received a wonderful random act of kindness, which is ubiquitous with this group. That you all step in and help everybody. But my most recent random act of kindness was traveling overseas, which I've never done before. And I was terrified to do it. And I contacted my predecessor and said, "Oh my goodness, what am I going to do?" And she said, "Take a deep breath. When you go to all of these places, smile. Everybody speaks English." Which is really interesting to find out that all across the world, everybody speaks English. And so when I would get to the different airports and look like a lost child because I had no idea what I was doing, I had all sorts of flight attendants, customs agents that were all very friendly and all saying, "Go this way, go this way." And I was running really late for my flight, and I didn't want to get stuck in Amsterdam. I really didn't. And the very nice lady said, "What time is your flight?" And I said, "We start boarding at 9:30. And there was this big, long line of lots of people to get through customs. And she said, "Here, come through here." And she snuck me through. And I got through and made my flight and made it to Reno. So that was my most recent random act of kindness.
Thank you very much. Unfortunately, random acts of kindness are not as common as we would like for them to So since today is World Kindness Day, Lee, what are you going to do to show kindness on this extraordinary day?
Good morning, fellow Toastmasters. Probably the most kind thing I could do for everybody would be sit down and shut up. But I have, usually the things that I do that are random acts of kindness have not a lot of forethought, because otherwise they wouldn't be random. So I will probably allow the other person to go first with the stop sign. I will probably refrain from shaking my fist at the person that tried to pass me in a no passing zone. I will commit to be friendly to people and help. I will go down to the Performing Arts Center and work on set construction for Buddy Holly's story, which you ought to all get your tickets for. It's going to be great. And the last random act of kindness will be to sleep.
Thank you, fellow Toastmasters. You would pass your ballots this way, by the way.
Thank you, Kathleen, for some great table topics. Make sure you vote and send your vote over to Kathleen for the table topics winner for today. Our first evaluator, as she's telling you, trying to, we'll give you enough
Oh,
time.
yeah, that's okay.
Well, actually, let's get a timer's report real quick. For the 3 table topics.
Larry spoke for 1 minute and 45 seconds. Patty spoke for 1 minute and 30 seconds. And Lee spoke for exactly 1 minute.
Wow. Very kind of him to sit right down. I'm also going to pass this around. I don't need it anymore. I think I can remember everybody else's role today. So please make sure you fill in. We have lots of open spaces for next week. So please take a moment to sign up. Kathleen is going to be our evaluator for Brian's speech.
Fellow Toastmasters, I don't know if I was reassured or concerned at the ubiquitous nature of dementia, but there is one thing that I hope you have noticed whenever Brian gives a speech. He is very articulate. He chooses wonderful words and has a process, a thought process that not only includes the information, the problem, but he always remembers to include it and a process or something that we can do about the problem. Not always to resolve it, as he mentioned today, that we cannot resolve dementia itself, but that there are steps that we can take ahead of time when we realize that this is the diagnosis that we are dealing with. The only thing that I would suggest Brian do differently is that I think you feel contained in this little space, because I felt like sometimes you would take a step this way, and if it looked more deliberate than this, it would have enhanced your speech. And so don't feel like you have to stand right behind the lectern, but you can go to either side and share what it is that you're talking about, perhaps from this perspective, come over to this side and share that one rather than you have to stay in one place. You also, I have to stand up here so everybody can see, because I notice it, you do this with your t-shirt. Don't do that one. Not necessary. We know it's on. You're fine. It's even right side out, so we're okay with that. But do realize, Brian, that every time that you come up to speak, I look forward to your speeches because I always learn something. Because your words carry your ideas not only to my mind but also to my heart and give me something to think about. And so I really appreciate it when you take the opportunity to speak. And I'm glad that you are doing that more often. Fellow Toastmasters.
Thank you.
Can I get a timer's report for the speech evaluation?
Kathleen spoke for 2 minutes.
Thank you. The next evaluator, very distinguished individual. Me? No. Dave, I was actually very pleased. I signed up to evaluate. Didn't know you were going to be speaking about veterans. And as a veteran, I thank you not only for your service, but for your speech that you gave. Thank you. When you saw Dave approach, you saw a very dapper, well-dressed, sharp-looking gentleman. Was he professional or what? As I watched your gestures, you had some very nice gestures. Something for all of us to keep in mind as we're speaking is we need to have these gestures because we wonder what are we going to do with these hands. Well, part of Dave's solution was to put one hand in his left pocket and use gestures with his right. One of the things that Dave, I was watching, Dave didn't do this, jingle the keys or anything. He kept his hand in his pocket and he gestured, and that was very good. It was an excellent use of trying to figure out what to do with his hand, and he gestured with the one hand. One of the things I would caution you is be careful with the rocking. And Dave does a nice job, and I think sometimes he's getting ready to move to try to be able to gesture and have more effective use of the stage because you have the stage. But a couple times as you're starting to move around on the stage, you start to move and then you don't. And I think maybe just watch the rocking as you're speaking. He had a very nice pace. One of the things that's important about speaking is you can communicate non-verbally, but it's the verbal words as well that are really important. And part of using and word choice is also pitch, rate, and pace. Dave had excellent pace. Everybody could understand. He had good pitch. And he varied his speaking. Couple things that I would be careful with as well is sometimes as you're speaking, you can get really quiet. And being quiet is very effective because you can listen. But if you speak too quiet, too long, people don't hear you. So I would suggest, as one other suggestion, because I need to give you a couple things to work on, is as you speak, as you start to get quiet, remember to bring it back and get people to listen. But I would say I very much enjoyed your speech. It was very touching as a veteran. I think it also, as I was looking around, you had everybody's attention. And I thank you for your speech. Toastmaster. Do we have a Table Topics winner?
We do today. However, not everybody voted. And we'll just assume that everybody voted the same way that the two people who actually voted did. And so, fellow Toastmasters, this is not the right way to do this, but it's hard to get around from that side. And so, Larry, you are the winner today of our Table Topics. You stand up, we shake right hands, and then I give you the trophy.
And you look at the
yes. Yes, of the picture. Great.
That for a week and bring it back if you want. You can take it home. You can put it in your car.
On your
Take it,
desk.
put it on your desk. But it needs to be back here next week. Yes.
Svetlana would like to
Yeah.
give a quote that she had prepared for today.
Excellent. Svetlana, you have the floor.
Yes. Can I share my screen?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. So as I was looking for the right quote or quotes for today's meeting, I came across this wonderful quote from Lady Gaga, a singer. And she said, "I have been searching for ways to heal myself. I have found that kindness is the best way. I've been searching for ways to heal myself, and I have found that kindness is the best way." And I also saw a cartoon where a bunch of homeless people who didn't know what to do with costumes which Lady Gaga gave them as a charity. And I would like to share my screen to show you the costumes. These are the costumes that Lady Gaga gave to the homeless.
Yeah.
And this is how they didn't know what to do with the costumes. You see the homeless people. Can you see them? Right. She generously donated her old clothes to the homeless. And she actually had very good intentions because she was healing herself by that act of kindness. And fortunately, there was another quote from Ron Hall, the writer, who said, "Together, we can change the world, just one random act of kindness at a time." And thank you so much for today's meeting, because you really did it with your stories, the quotes, and everything else. Thank you.
Thank you. Always fun to hear from you. Thank you.
Yes, thank you.
Now we have grammarian's report. If you can give us a report on our
Ubiquitous report on you gotta get another one in here.
That's right.
So the word ubiquitous was used by Laurie. Brian got it a couple of times. Kathleen got a couple. Patty, well, getting it in there. And I should have, and I didn't, except when I introduced the word. We had some audible pauses. Of course, Larry being new had a few. We'll learn on that. Patty, I had 4. Brian Haggerty kept it low today, 3. And Brian Norris had 3. A couple of grammarian things. Brian, you said, as you speak too quiet. And it is an adverb in that case, and it's as you speak too quietly. And Larry, you talked about your uncle laying in his bed. He was actually lying in his bed, unless he was producing eggs.
It might have been hatching in there.
He might have been. Okay. That's my report. Okay.
And Lori, if you would like to stand for your act, you may do this. The general evaluators.
Thank you, Brian. I would happily stand where I am. The meeting went very well with Svetlana. Thank you so much for letting us know that you were stuck in traffic and wouldn't be able to start, so that we gave us a little time to come up with plan B. So thank you, Brian, for standing in the Toastmaster on short notice. One of the things that you didn't do that I think we don't actually do a very good job of here anyway as Toastmaster is saying what the speech objectives are. Or the titles. You could have at least gotten the titles. But I will give you a break on that. And I also thought your introductions were a bit sparse. We tend to be very casual when we know who we are. We don't feel necessarily like we need these long, elaborate introductions, but I think that's something we could practice, because any other venue, we are going to be having to tell who these people are in the introduction. Worthwhile practicing those. And as far as speech evaluations for those new members, and those were textbook speech evaluations with a twist in the textbook, in the sense that said very complimentary things about what the speaker did well, and then very clearly articulated what they could have done to improve it, giving very specific examples, which is great. And what I really like, where I think they have a twist or professional quality evaluations, is how incredibly complimentary they were. And very, very constructive. We're not trying to say, oh, do this, do that. It's just, they were great speeches. And I think the both speakers really came out of the evaluation going, wow, I did a great job. There's some things I can work on, but, I feel good. And I think that's really important. We evaluate to motivate, is
the basic rule. And we'll be finishing on time, so good job as stand-in Toastmaster.
Brian, you did an excellent introduction for me.
You planned it, right?
I actually had this introduction right here. I'm worried. Thank you, Lori. Next week's meeting, we're running a little sparse on positions here. We need a Toastmaster. Svetlana, will you be here next week? Would you mind being our Toastmaster next week?
I don't mind. I don't mind.
Okay, so I'm going to put your name down as Toastmaster for next week, okay?
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Well, thank you. We have Lee as our first speaker. I will be evaluating Lee, so. No. Does anybody want to give a speech next week? We have an open spot. I think we need to hear a report from France.
France will be in California.
France will be in California.
She's actually
World
taking, she's taking vacation.
Well, we'll wait on France.
I have a speech I could do.
Okay. All right, well, Lee. And we'll need an evaluator for her. Brian, you'll be our grammarian. Kathleen will be table topics. And we don't have a timer, and Dave is our general evaluator. And everybody here has a role at that point, right? And Lori's going to be out of it. Lori's going to be gone. Jaylene's going to be gone. So we'll take a look and see what Krista is doing. Yeah, so during the week I'll see if I can get that filled in.
We need an evaluator.